I don't really like my hair right now. Nintendo has been making games since I was a twinkle in my parents' eye, and someone named Kim Carnes was #1 on the radio, who honestly I've never heard of until I researched this video. But the point is, Nintendo's been making games for a long time and is pretty hit or miss with how they leverage their legacy in a way that both entertains and educates the younger generation and the old fogies like myself. But back in 2016 and then again in 2017 and 18, Nintendo made some really good moves with an NES and SNES Classic consoles. Plug-and-play systems that were made to be cheap, simple, and robust ways to play the hits from those two libraries. And then they stopped. No restock of these releases and no classic iterations of other consoles to be seen. And I believe they're missing out on huge opportunities for not just hardware sales in the present, but exponentially more hardware and software sales way down the road into the next generations. In making this video, I also got to have an interview with one of my favorite people in the entire world. So I hope you're as excited to see that as I was to make it. Let's talk about it. The NES Classic came at a perfect time for Nintendo. The year was 2016, and outside of the hype for what would be only known as the NX until October of 2016, in July of that same year, the NES Classic was unveiled. A small plastic box the shape of a Nintendo Entertainment System, but smaller, with just a power cord, an HDMI cord, a controller, and 30 built-in games. If you're not super familiar with retro games, you might not know why this is a big deal. Maybe you remember a time when everybody had a Nintendo Entertainment System and you just figure, hey, just go get your old one, get your parents, or maybe buy one from a thrift shop or something. Well, without going too in-depth, even if you still had the console itself, it's not to say you would have all of the games that you'd want to play. And if you wanted to buy those games, a lot of the good ones are really expensive these days. And even if you did have the games and the hardware, getting it to work on your new 4K TV isn't always as straightforward as it should be. And especially if you're a collector, you want to keep it in as good a shape as possible, and every time you play it, it's just that much little more wear and tear. But then here comes this box that looks and feels like the original, has a bunch of games already on it, plugs right into your TV. Super convenient. And again, this was announced when the faith in Nintendo was super low, as the life of the Wii U was at rock bottom and the Switch hadn't yet been unveiled. In October, the Switch was shown, which was great, but isn't really the point here. And the NES Classic was released just a month later. This is far from the first plug-and-play system that had ever been released, nor is it the first time NES games were available again, as we could play them on the Virtual Console on several systems. But as a collector's item, it was great. Or even better for lapsed fans who had fond memories of the system but hadn't picked one up in a while. Actually, that's how I first heard about the NES Classic. My friend Clay was really excited about it coming out because he could play these games again that he hadn't played in a while and could show them to his son. Lo and behold, it launched and it sold incredibly well. And then, well, it sold all of its units, but because of its high demand and mediocre supply, it was a huge target for scalpers, meaning it was incredibly hard to find one for yourself, especially at its really reasonable price point of $60. Instead, you'd have to buy it upcharged to twice that price on a secondhand store. I don't think this phenomenon's too much of a surprise as far as the launch of consoles go anyway. It's pretty normal. Same thing happened for Switch for the first 4 or 5 months that it was out. The only problem was this thing was only out for about 4 or 5 months. In April of 2017, they said, we're going to stop production on the NES Classic, and then they did. And so it never really had that chance to level out. Of course, this was followed up by the SNES Classic coming out later that year in 2017, and then early in 2018, they restocked the NES Classic as well. So for a limited time, you could buy both of them, and they both sold incredibly well up until September of 2018 when they went out of production. And when all was said and done, they'd sold about 10 million units of them combined. But history lesson aside, I hope you picked up on the subtle narrative there that people like my friend who wanted to buy one of these to play them themselves as a lapsed gamer or to introduce it to somebody else probably didn't get much of a chance amidst all of the chaos of the short lifespan that these consoles had. I have two main big ideas in this video. On one hand, I'd love to see Nintendo do more classic consoles like these, even if they're just flash in the pan ones for other collectors and superfan dorks like me. And I'll elaborate a bit more on that later. But on the other hand, a more sustainable, potentially beneficial, and obvious action point is for Nintendo to get back on the shelves what they've already made. Of the combined 10 million units sold, most of these were probably to existing Nintendo fans who wanted a collector's item or a convenient way to play these games they love. And there's nothing wrong with that that. That's what I did. But thinking back to my friend, I don't know that he ever bought one of these systems because honestly, I don't know that it's worth the rigorous effort that it would have been for so much of that time for just a passing interest. So Nintendo missed out on him as a returning customer. But more importantly, they missed out on introducing themselves seamlessly to his kids. I remember being 7 and a passing interest in Pokemon is what led me to want to do any of this, but I can't interview me as a 7-year-old, nor would that be that beneficial to this conversation in 2020, and I especially don't want to break the space-time continuum. But the other day, I did get a chance to hang out with 2 of my favorite kids on the entire planet and interview one of them, Asher. Here we go.
I made Tanuki Mario here. I like him.
So I'm here with my good bud Asher. Asher. Hey, there he is. So first of all, tell me, who's your favorite Mario character?
Toad.
Oh! What do you like so much about Toad?
That I like his head.
Uh-huh.
And I love this Toad plushie because I can hug it and squish his head.
That's so true. We all like a squishy head. Asher, what kind of Nintendo games do you like to play?
Well, the latest one I've been playing is Rush 2. It's on 64. I like to play Super Mario Galaxy with Daddy, but now it's over. On Super Mario Galaxy 2, you can be Coaster Llama. You can make silly sounds like clapping sounds. So I cheered for him
Nice.
when he was doing something hard.
Do you clap for me when I do things that are hard?
I haven't really seen you do anything hard.
You haven't. Everything I do is so hard, Asher.
Here's my desk.
Look at that desk.
Time to work. I was late for that. I should have a roller bead stand, and the bigger the roller bead, the more money it costs.
It was when he made this one when I was like, oh my gosh, this is really cool.
What you got there? That's Mario, and what's that one?
Buzzy Beetle.
Oh, that's so true. Asher, how do you usually play games?
Sometimes I play with Daddy, sometimes I play by myself, which both ways I like.
What are the systems that you have that you play games on?
Nintendo 64, the Wii, and the GameCube.
Nice.
And I'm borrowing the SNES and NES from you.
Me? That's true. How are you first introduced to Nintendo?
The first time that Daddy actually told me about it is when Daddy did something special for me and brought out the old Wii, and I played that with him.
So then, out of curiosity, what's one game that you know of that you'd like to play but haven't gotten to play yet?
One of them is Animal Crossing, even though I've watched Jalen play it on her Switch and you played it on your Switch. I want to play Super Mario 3D World. It sounds fun. Also, came out the year I was born, 2013.
What's one thing you want everyone out there to know about Mario?
I think I would like to play Paper Mario Color Splash. That's on the Wii U, because you get to see where Mario lives for the first time.
Maybe you're a piece of ham. Have you ever thought about that?
I'm on the king side.
So you're not a piece of ham?
No, I'm not a piece of ham.
Oh. So the main reason I wanted to interview Asher was that while I know his introduction to Nintendo was on a slightly more modern console with his dad, the Wii, I mean, you saw all the perler beads that he made that were based off of old Mario sprites, and part of what interested him in all of that stuff was getting to play the NES and SNES games, understanding the origins of who these characters are. And also those consoles allowed him to be seamlessly introduced to other franchises that he might not have otherwise gotten to, like Kirby, for example. And I've got lots of thoughts on this, but the first one is that he had to borrow these consoles from me, which is great and fine because I've got other ways to play them. But while these consoles are available on eBay, they're way more money or hacked to bits with a bunch of emulated games, which, if we're talking about kids, probably piracy is not the best example to set right from the get-go. For Furthermore, his parents, my friends, still have their N64, GameCube, and Wii, so they have ways to play games that aren't these. But for some kids, this may be the only console they've got. But lastly, this is the most excited I've seen Chris, Asher's dad, be about playing video games since I've known him. Because while it might have felt like a superfluous expense and usage of time in the past, now it's an actual family activity that not only allows him to have fun with his son, but brings them closer together as they work towards goals. So that's not only a win for Nintendo, that's a win for love. So off of that, we'll move into the last part of the conversation. Where does Nintendo go from here? Well, I think getting what they've already made back on store shelves is a huge priority. Nintendo's pretty much always sold multiple hardware SKUs, but usually it's been a handheld and a home console. But now since those emerged in the Switch, they've got another opening for, something else to sell alongside it. Their side hustle, as it were. And you may be screaming this in the comments, but the point of re-releasing these two consoles isn't for you and me as fans, but it's for people who'd be nostalgic about it or those who have yet to be initiated. 9 times out of 10, they're not gonna want a RetroPie and they don't have the Nintendo Switch Online. This is the way to get them in the door. But the other big thing Nintendo needs to keep doing from here is to just keep going. Unfortunately, back in December of 2018, Reggie Fils-Aimé told us that Nintendo is not interested in doing any more classic consoles. But I'm just hoping that they change their mind. Obviously, they'd sell a ton to their existing fans, but then also hopefully get more people in the door. At one time, we seemed to all believe that this was gonna keep going just for every generation that exists up to like the GameCube or something. But interestingly enough, they may have enough trouble as it is with the N64. Modern Vintage Gamer has a fantastic video on this topic over on his channel where he mentions that it's not what games are going to come over that's the biggest question. It's really whether it's even possible at all. Specifically, Nintendo 64 hardware emulation is harder than we'd think. Probably part of that is why the PlayStation Classic was so bad. Those games are harder to run than what can run the NES or SNES games, and so it would cost more money, which might just price it out of what they think people would actually pay for such a thing. So that is too bad. But even if they were to do it just as a collector's item that was more expensive, I think there's a great selection of first-party games, even if they don't have the golden eyes and all that stuff. Actually, I think the controller is just as much of an obstacle as anything else. So for all these reasons, it doesn't seem like the N64 Classic would be coming. But a Game Boy Classic, they'd have to be crazy not to do it. The emulation would be super easy. It would run on a potato. Between the Game Boy and Game Boy Color, there's a huge library of games, but maybe more importantly, the Game Boy has huge cache right now. Check out literally any of Bob's videos on the Game Boy emulators on Wolfden's channel. And then also the Analog Pocket just went up for free sale a couple days ago and it's doing great. People want good ways to play Game Boy games, and more people than just in the gaming community are ready, which is the only people that are actually doing it so far. So making an official one would be the best next step for Nintendo. And I would say that's it, but I couldn't find a seamless way to put this into the video. But after Asher loved a gag from last week's video, we absolutely had to do this together. So here's to you, Nintendo.
That's kind of sound.
But that's what I think. What do you think? Do the classic consoles need a reboot, or do we just need to move on and get on with our lives? Let me know all that and more in the comments, and be nicer than usual in the comments because some people besides me may be reading them. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But that's it from this video. Feel free to subscribe to fanatixfour and ring the bell for more notifications for videos like this every Tuesday and Thursday, 4 p.m. Eastern time. And that's about it for me. Have a blessed day.